Welcome to the motherfucking We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears that Gabriela Fundora has signed a co-promotional deal, a co-promotion between her old promoter, Samson Lukowicz, and what is her new promoter, Goldenboy Promotions, as Goldenboy joins forces with Samson to co-promote the IBF Flyweight World Champion, Gabriela Sweet Poison Fundora. Fundora will make her first defense versus Puerto Rico's own Cristina Cruz on the television portion of Munguia versus Ryder later on this month.
On the 27th.
Samson Lukowicz has been in Gabriela's corner for a while now, her and her brothers.
Sebastian
Was over there on the PBC side of things. Samson Lukowicz, characteristically, he's actually done a lot of business with the PBC over the years, but the PBC, for whatever reason, are not interested in promoting female fighters. Now, least of all, when they have such limited resources, in spite of inking that Amazon Prime deal.
It's only 12 to 14 fight dates. They can barely accommodate the fighters that they already have without signing new ones.
Gabriela Fundora sports a professional record of 12 wins with no losses, no draws, 5 knockouts. A good long-range fighter, power puncher, and a knockout merchant in some instances. You're not going to be bored when Gabriela is in the ring, that's for sure.
She's an action fighter.
And for what it's worth, I think that Samson is doing a fantastic job with her. She fought 5 times in 2022, 3 times last year. In her last fight, she became IBF Flyweight Champion by knocking out Arely Musinho of Mexico, then IBF Flyweight Champion. Won the title in style. And now she is set to defend it. You know, initially, they were going to do an undisputed title fight between her and Marlene Esparza, yet another one of Goldenboy Promotions as fighters, Goldenboy Promotions as champions. But I believe there was some discrepancy over the money.
Something happened, and the fight fell apart. Gabriela Fundora was not yet a Goldenboy Promotions fighter at that time, but she is at this one. She's with them now.
And all the titles at Flyweight are split between Gabriela and Marlene. Gabriela's got the IBF, and Marlene, she's got all the other ones. She's supposed to be defending them. She's supposed to be running it back with former WBO champion Gabriela Alanis.
It's their mandated rematch.
As far as Gabriela is based out of the West Coast, the same as Goldenboy Promotions, where they do most of their shows. They do have their hands on the pulse of the Mexican-American fans. Gabriela was born in Palm Beach, Florida, but she currently resides in Coachella on the West Coast, so it is an idyllic pairing.
Why doesn't the PBC sign female fighters?
I don't really think they're signing any fighters right now, male fighters or female fighters. I don't think they have the resources to accommodate another cycle, another crop of fighters at this time, though if they haven't in the past, your guess is as good as mine. That's the way things are going. You know, Goldenboy's got a stable of female fighters, so does Top Rank to a lesser extent. We know Matchroom does. In many ways, Matchroom are the ones who got the ball rolling, greatly affecting the landscape for women boxers on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. Sky Sports and Boxer, they've got a stable of female fighters. So does Old Fish Eyes Frank Warren. I mean, that's the trend. That's what's going on, whereas the PBC seem greatly behind the times.
Where we are now, many of the big promotional outfits on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean have at least, at minimum, 2 female fighters in the contract.
What seems to be an aversion to promoting female fighters and signing female fighters, Gabriela Fundora is better off. She's better off at Goldenboy right now than she would have been at the PBC anyways. I'd wager that the people at Goldenboy made a decision to sign another female champion because one of their other champions, Yo Costavalle, who's rumored to be facing Senicia Estrada very soon, down there at light flyweight. Well, Yo Costa might lose that fight.
Wait, what?
Yo Costavalle is rumored to be facing Senicia Estrada on the undercard of Oscar Valdez versus Liam Wilson very soon. And Yo Costavalle, she might lose that fight. The people at Goldenboy, they know that, so they're stocking up.
They've signed themselves another champion. Now they have control of both the champions and all the belts in the flyweight division.
Gabriela will be making her first defense of her newly obtained IBF title opposite the ring Puerto Rico's own amateur standout, Cristina Cruz, an outside fighter, outside jabber, long-range fighter. And I think it's going to be hard to fight a long-distance, long-range fight against someone as statuesque, as long and limber as Gabriela Fundora, who towers over most other fighters, if not all other fighters, in this division, Christina Cruz included.
Christina Cruz ain't big on power, so I don't think she's gonna be able to keep Gabriella off of her.
Boxing and punching, Gabriela Fundora's straight punches, her long-range punches from the outside coming in while she closes the distance and maintains it. Well, I think it's going to be difficult for Christina to fight the fight that she normally fights. I think Gabriela's going to win. I think Gabriela's going to stay champion.
And what is this battle of the unbeatens?
So Christina Cruz is significantly older than young Gabriela Fundora. All the same, I think Gabriela's going to keep her blue belt, keep the IBF title, successfully defend it, and move on to face the winner of Esparza versus Alanis 2.
This is a good signing for Goldenboy, and I look forward to seeing Gabriella return to action later on this month.
In men's middleweight news, Lara versus Zerafa. The WBA reorders the long overdue mandatory middleweight title fight between Erislandy Lara, the champion, and Michael Zerafa of Australia, the challenger. Erislandy is back on the hook to honor a long overdue mandatory title defense. BoxingScene.com has confirmed that the WBA has ordered Lara to next defend his middleweight title versus Australia's Michael Zerafa. Both parties were notified of the development this past Monday via an official letter, a copy of which was obtained by BoxingScene.com. WBA rules entitle the President and Championships Committee at their own discretion to define a mandatory period. WBA Championships Committee Chairman Carlos Chavez informed Lara with Zerafa's team copied on the letter.
At their own discretion, emphasis on at their own discretion. It's written into their bylaws that the WBA will decide when it's time to order or reorder a mandated title defense, and they must have got tired of waiting.
So they've ordered this fight again at their own discretion. That's how all these alphabet organizations operate. They operate at their own discretion, and their respective champions got to play ball. They have to comply
if they want to stay champions.
Erislandy Lara was elevated to full WBA middleweight champion after Gennady Golovkin failed to comply with an order from the WBA to satisfy him as his mandatory challenger. He basically gave up the belt. It went to Lara, but it came with strings attached. Michael Zerafa, who was installed as Lara's mandatory challenger. But they got Zerafa to step aside. They got him to stand down in order to allow Danny Garcia to get a crack at the apple.
And the problem is that was months ago. They've had plenty of time to do the Garcia fight, and they still haven't done it, still haven't announced it.
Pursuant to WBA Rule C-13, bout limitations, the champion may not fight a boxer who is not the official challenger within 60 days of the expiration of the mandatory defense period. The two sides, Michael Zerafa and Team Lara, must reach a deal by February 15th, or else the fight would head to a purse bid hearing. Under that scenario, Lara would be entitled to the favorable end of the split, 75-25, as the reigning champion. The ruling puts back into play a fight that was ordered last March.
What I meant when I said they've had plenty of time to do it, last March.
Lara is represented by Premier Boxing Champions who informed the WBA of its plans at that time for the Cuban export to face Philadelphia's Danny Garcia. But from last March till now, they've had plenty of time to do the Garcia fight, and they still haven't done it.
WBA must have got tired of waiting.
The battle of the two-division titleists would have taken place at 155-pound catchweight, with Zerafa to have received an undercard slot and assurance of a direct shot at the winner. None of that has taken place, nor have any of the three fought since the ruling, or at all. In 2023, all three of the aforementioned parties sat out all of last year and haven't boxed since the year before that. Zerafa went public with his frustration over his signing with the PBC through estranged manager Elvis Grant Phillips. The veteran contender from Melbourne, Australia, who turns 32 in March, has been benched since November of 2022 and has not fought at all since his management team entered an agreement with the PBC. The failure to deliver a Lara versus Garcia fight forced the WBA to reorder the mandatory title fight. Lara hasn't fought since May of 2022, when he stopped Ireland's Gary Spike O'Sullivan in the 8th round of his lone title defense to date. He claimed the regular version of the title in May 20.
They're putting the PBC on the spot. In many ways, they don't have a choice. They have to get going at middleweight.
Something has to happen. The middleweight division, otherwise known as one of the glamour weights, at least historically, it's a ghost town. Nothing is happening in the middleweight division in 2024, and it's about time somebody did something about it. That's what the WBA is attempting to do. Boxing scene has learned that a tentative date of March 30th has been floated to resurrect Lara versus Garcia. However, all of the PBC's plans have been placed on hold since Showtime Sports exited boxing last December after 37 years. PBC was the primary content provider for Showtime Boxing.
Did they not know that the axe was coming down?
Well, perhaps they had some idea, but we're still hoping for the best, planning bouts as far into this year as March, late March of this year. That's when they were looking to do Danny Garcia versus Erislandy Lara, but obviously they had to change those plans. Showtime's not in boxing anymore, and the WBA, they're tired of waiting. So is Michael Zerafa.
Something's gotta give.
They struck that deal with Amazon Prime, but no dates were yet attached to that earlier announcement that they had inked that agreement, where it plans to air 12 to 14 shows annually, with this year's batch teased to begin in March. We've been talking a lot about the last couple of weeks and the last couple of months since that announcement was made, and how 12 to 14 fight dates may not be enough dates to accommodate 150 fighters. TGB Promotions, the lead promoter for nearly all PBC events, has venue holds for March 2nd, March 9th, and March 30th with the Nevada State Athletic Commission. However, they've previously held nearly a dozen dates going back to last November, from which just one has materialized. The November 25th, David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade Showtime pay-per-view event from the Mandalay Bay's Michelob Ultra Arena in Las Vegas. The PBC has not staged an event since December 16, the final Showtime Championship boxing card, which aired from the Armory in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he plans to move forward with Lara versus Garcia at this stage, would require the full cooperation of Zerafa.
And he might not. He already stepped aside once for these people, and look at how much time it lost him.
He told the Boxing Voice that in spite of having stepped aside to allow that Garcia fight to happen, they still haven't paid him for it.
Which we talked about more than once.
But any plans to move forward with Lara versus Garcia at this stage would require the full cooperation of Zerafa. That move will likely require step-aside compensation and an undercard slot, which was previously guaranteed in their initial contract, and a written guarantee that he would face the winner within a reasonable time frame. PBC could still move forward with Lara versus Garcia even without Zerafa's blessing, though it would likely require Lara to give up the WBA title voluntarily or by force. Such a fight would lose whatever luster it would have carried.
Of course it would. What the hell's the point in Danny Garcia fighting Lara if there's no belt on the line?
Should Erislandy Lara elect to give up the title, Zerafa would then be ordered to face the next highest ranked available contender, the number 2 ranked WBA middleweight at the moment, Elijah Garcia. 16-0 with 13 KOs, the red-hot 20-year-old southpaw from Phoenix, Arizona, who also fights under the PBC umbrella.
If that's what it came down to, he'd beat Michael Zerafa, though the question is, how long would it take to make that fight? Look at how long it's taking to make this one.
He's still a PBC guy, and I feel like Michael Zerafa has had his fill of dealing with the PBC and PBC fighters, because once you do, you know you're gonna lose time. It's a guarantee.
Nothing but a bunch of time wasters over there. That's what they are. This entire situation at middleweight is finally coming to a head.
The WBA middleweight title has been in limbo long enough, and something needs to happen. This whole thing with Michael Zerafa, Erislandy Lara, the WBA, and what was supposed to be a Danny Garcia fight, it's all about the PBC's inability to get things done in a timely fashion. To that, boxing insider Rick Glaser stated, still waiting for that PBC Amazon boxing schedule. It's now been 40 days since the PBC Amazon deal was announced on December 7th, and still not even one fight announced for what is supposed to start in March, 2 months from now. per that December 7th media release, it's now a bit of a mystery. It's definitely not a good look to start a new deal.
Why can't they get things done in a timely fashion?
Because of what I've been telling you. Haven't you been listening? The scarcity of resources, the scarcity of fight dates, they are not now operating at the same level that they once were. In a Lara versus Garcia fight, what is basically an in-house fight, that's not the kind of fight you're supposed to spend this much time on. It should be relatively easy to make if you have the resources, but they don't. And now what they have to do is schedule a Lara versus Zerafa fight in a timely fashion, or the title is forfeit.
Lara's in his early 40s, whereas Zerafa is in his early 30s. Now, Michael Zerafa has never been the boxer, the tactician or technician that Lara has been. Michael Zerafa's never operated on the same level as Erislandy Lara, but over a year removed from the sport in his early 40s, can you trust him to get the job done if you do spend money on this fight?
And think ahead. If you were to spend money on this fight, money to do it, and Lara beat him, and he won, and he's state WBA champion, what does that mean for the future? The future of the PBC, and what is their stable? Would it be better if Lara won the fight?
They're too focused on the past. That's the problem. That's why you're still wasting time and energy on Lara and Danny Garcia.
Well, what should they do?
Instead of focusing on the past, focus on the future. Instead of focusing on Danny Garcia, invest in Elijah Garcia, the young guy, the unbeaten one in the WBA's rankings. It would be better if you made the fight between him and Michael Zerafa than Lara and Michael Zerafa.
How does that work, you ask? Well, the deadline to reach a deal is over there in February. If they don't reach a deal, it goes to a purse bid. A few days ago, TGB Promotions, which is just another way of saying PBC, they put up $500,000 in an attempt to win the rights for the Murtazalia versus Kolkay fight down there at 154. They didn't win the bid. They got beat out by Aegon Promotions, who promotes Jack Kolkay. Now, you didn't have to spend that $500,000. You can take that $500,000 and put it towards Lara versus Zerafa, or you can have Lara surrender the title. You can have Lara give up the belt.
Why?
Because if he does, then Zerafa has to fight your other guy, your younger guy, Elijah Garcia, for it. And Elijah Garcia, he's an unbeaten up-and-comer, 16-0. I've seen him, he's decent.
He's a southpaw. He can beat Michael Zerafa. Michael's never been that good.
The reason you would want the title to go to a young unbeaten guy as opposed to a guy in his early 40s is because the young unbeaten guy has more good years to give to the sport. And you need young fighters to usher in the next generation and carry the banner.
We're in 2024 and you're still making fights for Erislandy Lara? He's in his early 40s. Danny Garcia, he's in his mid-30s.
The PBC themselves don't have the resources to accommodate every single one of these fighters. Thus, in order to make an omelet, you have to crack a couple of eggs.
Sorry, Lara.
Sorry, Danny, but with only 12 to 14 fight dates, you ain't got the resources to accommodate these guys that are in their mid-30s and early 40s. You have to focus on the future, and maybe you can if you focus on getting Elijah Garcia that belt.
I mean, maybe that's what they're doing. Maybe that's why they haven't made that fight yet.
Or maybe that's what they're going to do now that they're back on the hook and the WBA has reordered this fight. Maybe they'll have Lara give it up because in 2024, you can't afford to keep wasting time and money and resources in Erislandy Lara fights. You're never going to turn him into a draw. Whatever he was going to do in the sport of boxing, he must have done it already. It's time to focus on the future.